Hey guys, what's going on? It's Alan here and we're playing some Battlefield 4 on the PC. So the purpose of this video is I want to talk quickly about the differences between console and PC. I've wanted to do this for quite a while and I figure now is a good time now that the next gen consoles have been out for nearly a month or so and people have gotten used to them. I want to do a quick comparison. Now this isn't to hate on consoles or PC, it's just quickly to talk about the differences between the two and try and narrow the gaps down of why people dislike one or the other, and it's to try and give a reason why people have a preference over one or the other. So what I'm going to discuss quickly, this might break down to a fairly long video because I want to talk about some advantages and disadvantages of the consoles, then some advantages and disadvantages of the PC, along with some misconceptions console gamers may have about the PC, and then also touch on the topic of why PC gamers don't really like consoles usually, and why they kind of hate on console videos and say their PC is better and blah blah blah. And I want to get into that. I'm not saying I agree with it, but just to help you guys understand where they're coming from, kind of deal, if you will. So and then we'll conclude with just my thoughts on the whole matter, what I think personally about either or next gen consoles and PCs, and just my thoughts in general. So with that said, let's get into it. So we'll start with the advantages of the consoles, okay? Nice and easy. So first of all, consoles are family friendly, and what I mean by that is they have like loads of features that support your family. For example, they have Netflix integrated where you can just sit down in your living room with your family and just have some fun. It's something you can just stick down in your living room, sit down with your family and have some fun. You can watch movies and you can just have a lot of family time with that. It's plug and play as well. Like you buy your console, you stick it up to your TV, and boom, you're ready to go. There's really no issues there. It's just really intuitive and easy to use. There's also a split screen, and that enables you to like play with your friends at home without having to go online and play in separate rooms or separate areas. So it encourages, being able to play with your friends, and that's also a great thing, having a social aspect instead of just sitting in a darkened room on your own. This way you get to interact with people and have a lot more fun, which adds a more casual kind of appeal to it, and I'd say that appeals to a lot of people. So that's some of the advantages. There's also, of course, an even playing field. So what I mean by that is everyone, when they buy an Xbox One, PS4, Xbox 360, PS3, whatever, what they have is they have the console, they have their controller, and their headset, and that's basically it. There are modded controllers out there, but realistically most people just have their controller and their console and that's it. So it's an even playing field. Everyone has they're playing at the same resolution, the same frames per second, and no one really has much of an advantage over the other, depending just based on their own skill level, which is entirely different to the PC, because if you have an underpowered PC, you're at a complete disadvantage to people who have better specs than you. So in that way, consoles have an advantage because everyone's on an even playing field. And then there's the cheap uniform price. That's like the main selling point of consoles. They're cheap. You pay your $400 or your $500 or euros, and that's it. You don't have to worry about packing together different pieces and trying to create a jigsaw and wondering whether your different components will work together well. When you buy something, you just know it's going to work out of the box and you get what you pay for. So, but again, this can also be applied to PC because, consoles initially are cheaper. Building a PC can be more cost effective, and we'll get into that later when we're talking about PC gaming. But in general, consoles initially are a lot cheaper than PCs. The last point I want to bring up for consoles, their advantages, are that games are optimized. So because everyone's going to have the same specs, whether they have a PS4 or Xbox One, every Xbox One, every PS4 will have the same specs, so they can optimize the games to run better. And we've seen this because for the last gen, games on the PS3 and games on the Xbox 360, they're 8 years old now, systems, and games still run on them, like new games still run on them, and they don't look terrible. I mean, they don't look as good as they do on the next gen consoles, of course, but they don't look terrible and they run. If you had a system from 8 years ago, it wouldn't be able to run games now on PC in most cases. So I'm just saying it's generally it runs better in that sense, and it's a huge advantage having games being optimized for one system. So there's that. But now let's get quickly into the disadvantages, okay, of consoles. So one thing is they can't upgrade. So you're stuck at the level of performance that you get when the console is built, and you don't get a chance to change that until you get a new console, however long into the cycle that may be it like 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever. You're stuck with that, and that's what you get. So, and upgrading is a big advantage, because if you want, like, when new games come out and they're more powerful, you might want to make them look as good as you can, and you can only do that by upgrading your system, but you don't have that option. Also, if something goes wrong with your console, you can't easily fix it. There's no easily fix, if, like, I don't know, the power supply fails, or, the graphics card, the graphics hardware, something's wrong with that. You can't just take it out and replace it, because you'll void the warranty, and chances are you won't know what you're doing anyway. So that's the problem. You'd have to ship out the whole console and get it fixed, and that could be more expensive. Like, it could cost a third of the price of the console, or even more. And then you're without the whole console for like 3-4 weeks, however long it takes to ship off and get fixed and sent back to you, and it's just a load of hassle. And I've gone through it myself with the 360 at least twice, so it's a bit of a hassle. Of course, lower graphics and resolutions, of course. Next gen consoles, of course, look a lot better than previous gen, but still they leave a lot to be desired. We're not seeing true 1080p gaming. Granted, some games on the PS4 run in 1080p, but not all of them. And some AAA games like Battlefield 4 don't. And you notice the difference. Granted, and now we're running at 60 frames per second, so that's an advantage. But there's a lot of frame drops as well. And you notice this particularly with like Battlefield 4 and Rise as well, which even noticeably on YouTube, which goes up to 30 frames per second, which means that they're dipping below that, which is, of course, not acceptable. It's not really cost effective. That's another disadvantage for this. And people might be like, what? What do you mean it's not cost effective? Of course it's cost effective. Well, yeah, I mean, 500 quid, right? Say for the Xbox One. But you're not taking into effect that you're not getting 1080p gaming for 500 quid at 60 frames per second, which for a 500 to 600 PC, you'd be definitely able to get 1080p at 50 to 70 frames per second, so that's kind of ridiculous. Also, games are far too expensive. So, like, I mean, think about it. You buy a game, 10 AAA title games in 2 years on the Xbox One or PS4. They're going to be $60 each, 60 quid each. And that's €600 just on 10 games. That's a ridiculous price. That's enough to build a good PC in itself, And if you add that on top of your console, plus the whole $60 a year for subscription, or €60 a year for subscription fee, which now the PlayStation 4 will incorporate, as well as the Xbox One. So you're paying, if you have it for like 6 years, that's €360. It's a lot of money, All that added up, your console is now much more expensive than a PC. It's not really cost effective when you take those things into account. And then there's a lack of hard drive space. And what I mean by that is you've only space for one hard drive, and when the consoles ship, you're getting 500 gigabytes, I think, in the main hard drive. So 500 gigabytes, which when you think about it isn't that much. When games these days to download cost about 30 gigs sometimes, or some games, I think Assassin's Creed was about 30 gigabytes. So that's a lot of memory for one game, and that'll fill up really fast, and you can't upgrade it. I mean, you can switch out the hard drive and put another one in, but then you don't have access to your other hard drive. So then if you want to play one of the other games, you have to keep switching out your hard drives, and that's a bit of a hassle, isn't it? So there's some of the advantages and disadvantages of consoles, okay? I haven't given my opinion on anything yet. These are just facts, and you can research them if you want, but that's just how it is. So we'll talk a bit about some PC advantages, okay? And see where that goes. So some obvious PC advantages would be they can be fairly cheap, and what I mean by that is initially it'll cost more than a console to get a decent price. Like, you can build a PC for about 500 and 600 quid and get around the same performance as a next gen console, or slightly better. But if you go into like the 600 or 700 price point, you'll get so much better performance for your money. And also, not only will you be getting better performance, but you get to choose what goes into your PC. you can upgrade it, so you can like choose the components and what you want. If you want a better graphics card or a lesser graphics card, better processor, you choose what goes in there. Whereas with a console, you have to get what they ship with it. And a good example of that is the Xbox One was shipping with Kinect, and until recently, I'm not even sure if it's optional yet, but I think they might be shipping one that's optional later, so you don't have to get Kinect. But loads of people didn't want the Kinect, but they're forced to buy it. So, that's forced on you, whereas PC, you get to choose whatever you want. So I list that as an advantage. Of course, there's the better graphics. Depends mainly on the graphics card and how much you want to invest into it. But yeah, you're guaranteed to get better graphics on the PC, even for the same price or similar price to the Xbox or PlayStation 4, because you just throw in a graphics card and you can get 1080p gaming. You just have to turn down the settings maybe with the lower graphics cards. If you threw in a 7870 or a 650 Ti, both graphics cards are in and around £100 now, so you'd be able to play 1080p gaming at like 40 to 60 frames per second with both of them in most games with medium to high settings. So I mean, you can't ask better than that, really. And of course, the more you invest in it, like I said, the more performance you get out of it. Like, there's a really big ratio of price to performance with PC, and that's really good because you get what you pay for. And a lot of people believe that PC gaming is so much more expensive, but we'll get into that in a little later, I guess. So of course there are more options. What I mean by more options is in everything you've more customizable. Like when you go into a game, there's settings that you can turn up for better graphics and better fidelity, but they might affect your frame rate or your performance, so you might want to make sure you have a system that's capable of it. But you have the option to run the game at the best settings you possibly can, or you can turn it down to get higher frame rates, especially in games like Battlefield, where this is important. What I'm saying is you have the option to do this, whereas consoles, you're stuck at whatever option they set for you, so you can't turn up the graphic settings or turn down the graphic settings. You're stuck with that, which is a disadvantage for consoles. And of course you get higher frame rates and better performance, but again, this depends on what you put into it, but generally that is the case. You generally get better performance on PC games. So there's some of the advantages. Now, disadvantages might be it's harder to put together than a console. For example, it's not just, you can't take it out of the box and it's ready to go. You have to like put things together and make sure everything's compatible. So that's a disadvantage because some people mightn't be arsed like learning how to do this and putting stuff together. I know myself, it took me a few weeks to learn how to do it, and I don't regret it because I actually enjoy it, but some people mightn't be arsed trying to learn all this technical stuff and how stuff goes together. It's a lot easier than I would have thought it would be, but even so, it's still a lot harder than consoles. There are also issues. Sometimes games don't run, or for whatever reason your game will crash if it's not getting enough power, if you chose the wrong components that don't really fit together, if you didn't plug everything in correctly, stuff like that. There are little problems like that. So they're the main disadvantages. There are others, but I haven't really encountered any major problems, so that's just me. But I'm sure if you can think of any other greater disadvantages, please point it out. So we'll quickly talk on some misconceptions that console gamers have about PC, which might overlap with some of the stuff I've said, so forgive that. And then we'll quickly talk about my thoughts overall, and then we'll end this because it's been going on for longer than I meant to. So first of all, price, like I've mentioned before. Like, people seem to think that you need to have like over €1,000 PC to run games, but that's not true. You can build a PC for €500, €600, €700 and it will outperform a PS4 and Xbox One in pretty much all categories. So and games, that's another thing I didn't touch on. While games on console are like €60 plus when they're newly released, on PC the most the games cost, for me anyway, like Battlefield 4 when it came out, was €40. Okay, and digital download, and that has since dropped, and Steam sales are ridiculous. I mean, on Christmas sales, summer sales, you get up to 75% off. Like, for example, I bought Metro Last Light last week for €10, a game that's worth €30 to €40 any other time of the year. So I bought Far Cry 3 for €7.50 as well, worth like €30 any other time of the year. Assassin's Creed 3 was down for a tenner as well. Like, it's ridiculous the amount of sales that are going on, and games anyway at their most price usually cost about €30 to €40. Never seen a game more than €40. even newly released, like AAA titles we're talking here. So in terms of that, you'll save so much money by buying games from Steam and other like digital downloads. And of course, developers get more money when you buy games from digital download than going through a real retailer like GameStop anyway. So also when new games release, you also have the option of just purchasing it straight away the minute it releases and it downloads to your console instead of having to travel out to a shop and queue up and buy it. Now, I know some people like that. I used to like it, but this is just so much more convenient. And also another thing, games, when you buy them on Steam or Origin, they're forever linked to your account. So if your hard drive crashes and you need to get a new one, all your games are still on your Steam, so all you have to do is buy a new hard drive and re-download your games. And the best thing as well is it also saves your games to the cloud. So not only if you lose your game and you re-download it, you don't have to lose your saves as well. Your saves are saved on the cloud, which means when you re-download your game, you'll still have your save files. That is really big, and I found that really a really big advantage. And that's that. But we're kind of going off point here. So another misconception is that PC users can't really use controllers. You have to stay hunched up with your mouse and keyboard over your desk, but that's not true. Controllers work. You just plug them in, maybe download a couple of drivers, and they'll work. So you can play from your couch or whatever. Same as consoles, so it's really a good idea. And people seem to think that there are loads of hackers. Personally, I've been playing on PC since August and I haven't encountered one hacker. So, that's bullshit right there. It's complicated to build. Maybe, if you're not arsed to look it up. I mean, you could watch a 30-minute YouTube video and you're sorted. Like, it's literally like Lego. You plug things in and everything goes in a lot of place. It's not overly complicated. Then piracy, again, it is a problem, but it doesn't really... like if you're going to pirate games, you can do it for the consoles anyway. So I don't know. I don't condone pirating stuff anyway. But there you go. If people are going to do it, they're going to do it. So, and complicated controls. Well, that's the last point I have about this, and it's true. Some controls are complicated for games, especially on keyboard. But like I said, you can just use a controller if you prefer. But for first-person shooters like Battlefield and Call of Duty and Far Cry 3 and even Metro Last Light, stuff like that, I find actually keyboard and mouse give you far more precision, and it's really intuitive. Like, you pick it up within a couple of hours or so and you get pretty good at it. So they're the advantages and disadvantages of consoles and PCs, along with some misconceptions that some console gamers have about PCs. So the last topic I have before I give my opinions on it is some reasons why PC gamers don't exactly like consoles. Okay, so first of all is price to performance. Consoles kind of screw you in this because when you're paying 500 quid, 400 to 500 quid for your console, you're not even playing at 1080p in most of the cases. Like Rise, which is a signature game for Xbox One, Battlefield 4 again, which is a major title for both platforms, is only running at 900p. And you're getting 60 frames per second, but like I said, frame drops. So whereas if you were buying a PC of equivalent price point, you'd be able to get 1080p no problem. So they're screwing you in that way. Consoles hold back gaming. This is another reason why some PC gamers will argue that they don't like consoles. They'll say that consoles are holding back gaming, and in a way it's true, because when you think about it, games need to work on less powerful systems. And what I mean by that is like the new games are limited by what they can do because they still need to run on last gen consoles. And as we can see now that we're moving into the next generation of consoles, games are going to get more powerful. We're seeing that in like Rise and stuff like that, which while it's at lower resolution, the facial animations are amazing. And Dead Rising 3, the amount of enemies and stuff we see on screen, games like this and Killzone Shadowfall, same thing, more complicated enemies and more smarter AI. All this stuff is coming on because the next gen consoles are more powerful. Things that weren't possible to do before the next gen consoles came because the last gen consoles weren't powerful enough to run these systems, run these extra features. And in a few years, when the technology evolves again, especially for PC, we're not going to be able to take advantage of these features in the mainstream because the consoles won't be able to match up and run these extra features, say in 5 or 6 years time, you know. So in that way, consoles do kind of hold back gaming, and that's why a lot of PC gamers you'll see hating on consoles, because they're underpowered and stuff. I'm not saying consoles are bad. I actually really like consoles. I'm just stating some facts here and the reason behind them, and so that's why you get a lot of hate on them. So just bear that in mind. Now, the last point I have on this is that some console players are kind of contradictory. This is another reason why PC gamers are like annoyed, because you'll see a lot of comments going from console gamers going, PC graphics are stupid, graphics don't make a game, you know, a game has more than graphics. And I agree. If you have a great looking game but bad story online and stuff like that, it's not going to be fun and it's not worth your money. But likewise, if you have a great game, like storyline and stuff, but the graphics are shit, it's going to be not equally, but it's going to be pretty bad. It's not going to be as enjoyable as a good game with good graphics. But the thing is, while console gamers are always like, graphics aren't everything, back in last gen, when people were talking about PC, they were saying graphics isn't everything, but now that next gen is coming, they're like, look at our graphics, it's almost as good as PC. So that's kind of contradictory, isn't it? Graphics aren't important, and yet they're all swarming over the next gen graphics. Even though it's not as good as PC, it's still fantastic in its own right. I'm not going to deny it. They do look fantastic. But I'm just saying, it is a little contradictory in that sense, isn't it? That's just why some PC gamers don't like it. You see it in the comments all over the place. So those basically are the topics I want to talk about. And now briefly I want to talk about my thoughts. So I don't hate consoles. I don't hate PC. I play more on PC now than I did in consoles because I only have an Xbox 360 and the experience is completely different. Going from 30 frames to 60 frames plus is completely different. I'm sure you guys know that now, the ones who've moved to next gen consoles. And if I try and play a game that's at 30 frames per second now, it's just too hard. It's a lot worse of an experience, and it's a lot harder to do, so I choose not to go back. But having said that, another point I forgot to mention in Consoles Plus is exclusives. They have some very good exclusives. My favourite game of all time is Red Dead Redemption, a game that has never been released on PC, and that game is my favourite game of all time. It's unbelievable story, fantastic graphics, even for the Xbox 360 it looks unreal, and I've just nothing else to say on that. So while I play predominantly on PC now, my favourite game is still on consoles, and I do still play my Xbox 360 because there are some games I like Gears of War, and the exclusives are great. But I will be getting an Xbox One in the next year or two, so I have nothing against consoles. So that's just my quick thoughts. PC will give you better price to performance, and the more you invest in it, the better experience you will have. But consoles are still a very good alternative for those who don't want to or don't know anything about PC and aren't bothered to learn. So that's just my thoughts. I've wanted to do this for quite a while, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. And that's it. I'm off, so see you in the next video.